Wyoming, it's Harriet Hageman, your representative in Congress. This week in Washington was an interesting one. I participated in 6 different committee hearings, voted on a minibus spending bill, and Joe Biden gave his State of the Union speech. Biden made a lot of statements, but the problem is that much of what he said just wasn't true. The truth is that under Joe Biden's failed leadership, our country is weak, woke, and weaponized. Under President Biden, the world is in chaos, and America is weaker on both the domestic front and internationally, almost more than at any point in my lifetime. There are wars being waged in multiple theaters. We have an invasion of over 10 million illegal aliens crossing our borders, and Communist China is spying on us daily. We are weak economically, with inflation over 18% across the board since Joe Biden took office. Energy prices have skyrocketed, and our national debt is at an obscene $34 trillion. Our country is a woke mess, where this administration sends men in dresses to lecture us about proper pronouns, eco-grief seminars are being held by federal agencies, radical environmental and land use policies are destroying our energy independence, and men are being heralded as heroes for defeating women in women's sports. The federal government has been weaponized against its own citizens, surveilling parents at school board meetings and families attending church services, censoring online contact, coercing banks to turn over data so that our purchasing activities, such as buying guns, can be used to punish and control us, and the DOJ using its power to prosecute perceived enemies of the regime, including Joe Biden's leading opponent in the 2024 presidential election. This is the State of the Union under Joe Biden. But it doesn't have to be that way. This election year is critically important to turning this country around, and we need all of you to be engaged. As for our legislative activities, the House voted on a package of 6 appropriations bills that were lumped together into what is often referred to as a minibus. I voted against this ill-conceived spending plan for many reasons. First, Washington's addiction to spending must be stopped. With a national debt of over $34 trillion, a debt that is growing by $1 trillion every 100 days, we must be bold in our efforts to fix this very real problem. The minibus provides over $60 billion more in spending than the same 6 appropriations bills drafted by House Republicans earlier this year. Second, this legislation is full of gimmicks used to circumvent the already absurdly high spending caps touted within the minibus. By converting regular government-as-usual operations into hundreds of millions in emergency spending, the true magnitude of spending is not included in the top-line numbers of this appropriations package. Third, many of the policy issues that are of importance to Wyoming and that were included in earlier bills passed by the House have been left out of this minibus. Delisting the Greater Yellowstone Ecosystem Grizzly and stopping the implementation of the Rock Springs Resource Management Plan were both stripped from the final spending package, and money to implement a program that isn't even law. EID ear tags for cattle and bison was increased, making our fight against mandatory EID even more difficult. Finally, this package of spending bills is not the change we need to restore fiscal responsibility in our federal government, and trying to sell it to the American people as such is dishonest. Congress must begin to use its muscle memory by using the power of the purse to actually change policy. In terms of committee work, we held 2 hearings in the Natural Resources Committee that were focused on issues that are critical to Wyoming. The first was a hearing on H.R. 7375, which reforms the way in which expressions of interest, or EOI fees, are assessed under the Mineral Leasing Act. Under this bill, operators will not have to pay EOI fees unless the Bureau of Land Management holds a lease sale for the parcel of interest. In addition, it would extend an EOI's validity from 3 years to 5. The second committee focused on natural asset companies, or NACs. Not surprisingly, the Democrat witness who was supposed to show up to testify, the guy largely responsible for conceiving of NACs, refused to show up, being concerned that he may actually have to answer difficult questions about his radical effort to fundamentally change the way that federal and private lands are managed in this country. The ranking member actually walked out, also refusing to participate. Considering the fact that these natural asset companies were intentionally designed to transfer most of the management authority from our federal land agencies to private individuals and foreign powers, it is also strange that neither BLM nor the Fish and Forest Service sent witnesses to testify. Despite the no-show status, however, other witnesses from across the country testified to what NACs are and how they would be implemented. They provided a dire warning about what NACs would do to our ability to produce energy, grow food, and access our natural resources. They are the true experts. I will continue to fight against these NACs and protect America's grazing, farming, energy exploration, and recreational use rights. We also held another hearing in the Indian and Insular Affairs Subcommittee, focusing on how to provide additional autonomy to our tribes in the management of their affairs. The Republican-controlled House has already started on the 2025 budget, and I am hopeful that we will actually implement an approach that allows us to fully engage in the appropriations process. We must address both our long-term spending situation and focus on implementing legislative policy through prioritizing what the American people want. We had numerous visitors to our office this week, and I was honored to spend time with the O'Toole family and other Wyoming citizens in D.C. The trees are beginning to flower in Washington, so it looks like we may have an early spring. I look forward to returning to Wyoming soon, however, to continue my town halls and meeting with constituents throughout the state. If you would like more information on all of this week's votes, committee hearings, media interviews, and more, please subscribe to my weekly newsletter, The Wyoming Roundup, or follow me on social media at Rep. Hageman. Links to the newsletter and my social media pages are also provided on my website at hageman.house.gov. I hope you have a wonderful week and that all of us are able to take the time we need to focus on this season of renewal, hope, and joy as we prepare for Easter. This is Harriet Hageman signing off after another eventful week in Washington, D.C.